Water and Plumbing. Anthony Slater joins us. I don't know if it's courtesy of Flowing Water and Plumbing, but if Anthony does not come correct, our 95-70 Game Insider, we may just flush him. Well, maybe we'll just play this out every answer.
How about I ask him this, Anthony? When was the last time you had plumbing issues?
So my backyard flooded like the last couple of days, and I had to get like an irrigation guy out here. It's kind of really frustrating me, honestly. So, I mean, this is like, I feel like I'm still in my nightmare of the last 2 days. I mean, I guess that's not a plumbing issue, but it feels like it.
Well, I'm telling you now, you need next time, you hit up our friends at Flowing Water, Plumbing and Drain.
Will they come up to Sacramento?
They'll take care of you.
I'm sure Brian he'll make a special exception for you.
They specialize in East Bay, Peninsula, and South Bay, but trust me, for friends of our show, they'll do anything.
And listen, Anthony,
mention the morning roast.
And it's a free estimate, Anthony, so you don't have to pay for them to come out and check your stuff out. That's on the house.
Well, I like it. I'm part of an ad read this morning.
There you go. We were just talking about Andrew Wiggins and discussing this game, and I saw you before the game, and Anthony, you did mention, you go, the Knicks might win this game. I was like, there's no chance. Anthony, this is why you're the expert. This is why you get paid the big bucks. But I swear to you, about 4 minutes left in the second quarter, I looked up at the scoreboard. It's like, is Andrew Wiggins playing today? It was just one of those nights for him as he'll have a good game. He'll be solid like he was Saturday night. And then Monday happened. Now, he wasn't the only one. I don't want to just pinpoint and point the finger at Andrew Wiggins. They just weren't good collectively. But Andrew Wiggins, I mean, have you seen anything like this in all the years you've covered the NBA and all the years you've watched the NBA to where this guy has been a perennial 19-point per game, 17-point per game, 20-point per game scorer who plays solid defense to what he's done for the most part of this season? Have you ever seen anything like this in the NBA?
Yeah, because, I mean, he scored a little bit better early in his career, but it's not like he was, an all-star for 8 years, and then suddenly at age 29 he did this. I mean, what was the rep on him coming out of Minnesota? Why was he available why did he come with what ended up being the 7th overall pick for D'Angelo Russell? I mean, he did this in Minnesota. There were several seasons where, yeah, sure, the counting stats were a little bit better than this year. He's down to 12.6 points per game when he's, was typically in the 17, 18, 19 range in Minnesota, but it was like they never felt the impact on winning, the impact on the game. And I think that's been at times, what you certainly felt this season, part of last season. And then, the lack of availability at times has been new this year. But I don't know. Would you identify him as like problem number one, or do you guys?
No, I don't even want to label the problems, but it's been a slew of problems for this team. It's just one of the biggest issues because he probably is, Anthony. Maybe you disagree with this, but I consider him to be the best individual defender, on the ball defender on this basketball team. So when you see a guy like Jalen Brunson, we're thinking, 2022 Wiggs, that's his guy. And no, it wasn't his guy on Monday night, but it's been to me, he was one of the most important players coming into the season, if not the most important, because of what he could do on both ends of the floor. And by him not being consistent this season, the team has been inconsistent this season. And I think he's had a huge hand in that, but I wouldn't say he's problem number 1, 2, 3, or 4. There's some slew of problems with this basketball team.
Yeah, I'd say if we're just talking pure defense, like Gary Payton II has had, several injuries that have popped up. I thought the other night he was really foul prone. He was clearly pretty ticked off post game about the refereeing, but remember he gets called for the flagrant on a Jalen Brunson 3, and they were fouling jump shooters. I know that was one of the main problems they were, upset about. He has not had that high impact season. There have been games where you see that Gary Payton, but he should be their kind of ace defender off the bench. Draymond Green obviously missed several games this season. He's their defensive heartbeat. Klay Thompson is not what he used to be as a perimeter defender. Sure, you needed more from Wiggins. Also, I think maybe Kuminga's offensive responsibilities have maybe stripped away a little bit of his, individual defense on a night-to-night basis. I don't know. There's problems all over. I don't think Steph Curry's having a particularly good defensive season. So there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
We had Steve Kerr on, and he dismissed the notion that Draymond's back issues stem from all the minutes that he's played at center. But do you think some of this extended time at center has impacted his overall performance, or maybe just the performance on both ends of the floor for the team?
No, not really, because do you ever see him handling post ups, or having to battle off these gigantor centers. Like, no, he's just, to me, when Draymond's out there at center, it spaces the floor much better for the Warriors, but I don't see him being physically taxed more than when he's at the 4, really. I mean, like, it's just, like, not in this modern NBA. I just think his age and just, like, what the regular season is, which is, you know, it is a grind, and that he's going to kind of, you know, go in and out, and he's had back troubles in the past. I just think it's, like, just naturally playing NBA minutes at his age is going to lead to bumps and bruises. The bigger question is, okay, you can want him to play the 4, but they tried to start Kevon Looney next to him all season. It didn't work. They've tried some him and Trace Jackson Davis lineups. They want to do that a little bit more because, you know, that could be part of the future front court. But you know how challenging playing a front court in the modern NBA is with Jonathan Kuminga at the 3, Draymond Green at the 4, and Trace Jackson Davis at the 5. Those are 3 players that the defense does not believe, you know, are going to hit threes. Like, Kuminga will actually hit threes. Even Draymond's shooting decent this year, but they're not going to guard them out there. So, like, that's their trouble, right? And in the modern NBA, you can say, why is Draymond Green playing primarily at the 5? That's kind of what he is at this point. It's what he has to be.
Wow. So they're going to be at a disadvantage then if he's – look, because Draymond does still play elite defense, but he's 6'6", and I watched it, you know, from when I was sitting at the Monday, Hartenstein just was able to get vertical on Draymond and have no problem scoring, and that's not on Draymond. It's a size issue. Even when they were winning the championships, everybody said the small ball lineup, but Kevin Durant is not small. Andre Iguodala with this wingspan is not small. And so now you're really small this season with Podzeimski and Curry and sometimes CP3. So in the offseason, when we get there, do you think this organization now, obviously the Wiseman pick looms large here, when that doesn't work out, maybe that's your 5. Is there going to be a heavy emphasis on getting some rim protection and some size down low? Because it feels like the days of playing super small, especially when you're not as athletic as you were, say, 3, 4, 5 years ago, seems like there's going to be an importance on that position. What are you hearing with this organization in the offseason as they look ahead to the future?
Well, you made an important point there when you mentioned James Wiseman. I think the sting of the James Wiseman whiff pick, you're feeling more now. Mm-hmm. Because James Wiseman, this would have been what, year 4, year 3, 4. It is. Yep. I mean, that's when he was supposed to matter. And not only was he supposed to matter as their starting center, but a shooter, right? You remember when he came in the league his rookie year, he was hitting threes. I can remember one game against Minnesota. He was hitting like pin down, like coming off screens, like in Klay Thompson type of actions. And it was like, oh man, this is the perfect center to have next to Draymond because he can space the floor, but also rim protect, as you mentioned. You know, and it's the modern way, right? How would Chet Holmgren, for example, who was also like Wiseman, a second overall pick, look? Why did they look at Kelly Olynyk at the trade deadline? Why were they interested in him? I think they do want a center that can shoot next to Draymond. I think that's what Dario Saric, you know, theoretically was supposed to be at times this season. That's what JaMychal Green was supposed to be last season. Neither of those 2 free agent signings worked quite as good as Otto Porter did, you know, a couple of years ago. So you have to have a specific big next to him because, you know, look, 2 non-shooters. That's why the Looney lineup next to Draymond has been such a problem. So, yeah, I mean, I presume will be an emphasis this summer, but you still got to get the right player because you can go sign a Dario Saric for the vet minimum. He's about as good as you could have gotten. I think we all like that signing this summer. Hasn't really been that effective over the last couple months.
You know, it's interesting because you're referencing, and Bonte and I do this from time to time. There's this thing about Wiseman. He's just not good. He never could play. He was never any. He did show some signs of life, and he showed a lot of, I thought, flashes, especially in that first season. And he got hurt. And then when he came back, it looked horrible. Don't get me wrong. It did. It looked horrible. But if the Warriors could go back and redo something outside of the actual selection, what part would they redo? Trading him outright? Developing him sooner? Like, where do you think the misstep was with that?
I think that first year they tried to hit fast forward too quick. He didn't even remember he got COVID his rookie year in camp. Didn't play any preseason, barely practiced, and then they started him in Brooklyn night 1, and then he scored like 19 points in his first game.
KD
like
and Kyrie, in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And he held his own against Giannis on Christmas Day in the first half.
And then literally like 2 nights later, he went to Brooklyn, and it was like, I believe it was Mason Plumlee. He like blocked his floater, dribbled down the floor, did a Euro step dunk, and like the internet exploded. Like the Warriors have Giannis now. It was like people thought they had hit this home run. you can even go back, and there are quotes from like Draymond and Steve Kerr at the time that's like, we found our foundational center. Like, it was pretty definitive at the time. And I think two things. I think number one, like they fast forwarded that belief that he was a star too quickly and too publicly. And then number two, I just think they tried to fit him too much into the Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Steve Kerr offensive ecosystem when he was never built to play that way. So I think they should have simplified his role to like a pick and roll dive big, and not try to make him do Andrew Bogut dribble handoffs and, some of like the flare screens and this and that. He just wasn't ready for that.
What about the Gary Payton Jr. Gary Payton second trade? If they knowing everything they know now about where they're at and the redundancy of their roster, you think they would have just if they could do a redo? You think they do that trade again?
Yeah, because that was partly about getting off the money. They saved a bunch of tax, and there was a belief by then. And I think the injuries really did snowball on James, and he never developed like he could have if he doesn't have the meniscus tear, which ends up forcing him to miss a season and a half, by the way. There were complications with that. They had to do a cleanup, procedure. So by that point, I think they wanted to really just – he would have been making like 9-point-something last year, 12-point-something this year. He was probably going to be available this summer, by the way, as like a minimum free agent. But no, I think they'd make that trade again because not only was it not working, but like the rhetoric around it. Just remember, like that was a talking point every day on y'all's airwaves, for sure.
No doubt. Oh man, it's a lot of talking points every day on these airwaves.
The other thing I will say, Trace Jackson Davis, they drafted him 57th overall. Like he's ready. Right. They like him. He's good. Like. He's not a shooter, so I do think they do need to find a shooting big, but I think they kind of like him as a very cheap, by the way, from a contract standpoint.
If you compare him with another guy who can space the floor, Anthony, I think TJD has been impressive. 9 for 9 the other day. First rookie to do that since the shot clock era, for the Golden State Warriors. I mean, I'm looking at Gafford and Lively in Dallas. I'm looking at some of these other teams that have tandems where I'm like, wow, that works. Dive into the basket, dunking, high percentage shots. TJD is all that there. As we're talking to Anthony Slater, I almost said Anthony Davis. Anthony Slater here on 95.7 Game Insider on the Morning Roast. So, what's the best case scenario with this team? And what happens this summer if they do reach that best case scenario? Let's say the best case scenario is they enter the playoffs and they lose in the first round. Obviously, Joe Lacob's not going to be happy with that.
Y'all feeling really, really rough this morning. That's the best case scenario.
No, I'm not saying it's the best case. I mean, best case scenario is going to the NBA Finals, no doubt about that. But I mean, but I'm not saying that, Saskin, that they're going to go to the NBA Finals.
I'm scared they're going to lose a home game to the Grizzlies, and we're talking about the NBA Finals.
Sasky's worried about the Rockets right now.
With the Houston Rockets on their tails.
He's worried about Dylan Brooks and the Rockets.
Hey, the Rockets, I watched them last night. Jalen Green's kind of starting to pop a little
42 bit. 42 last night.
42, yeah. I mean, it was the Wizards. It was a rough defensive showing. But, they have a really easy schedule, like the next few. But then, the Rockets' schedule does get tough. They do play the Warriors in Houston coming up, which, like you said, could be kind of a big game. But I don't know. No Sengun. And by the way, the Warriors already clinched the tiebreaker. I don't think they're getting caught from behind, but the fact that we're talking about it is quite something.
Clinching the tiebreaker for the 10th spot is the saddest sentence throughout this entire Warrior dynasty.
Down bad
They've
right
already
now,
clinched the tiebreaker for the 10th spot.
Hey, the Giants season's coming up. Prepare yourself. You're going to be having like fourth wild card. Can they, Diamondbacks? You're going to be talking about that.
Hey, dog, I'm all locked in. We are fired
I know. I heard
up.
I know, but I believe you were locked in a few weeks ago. The Warriors had a big win, and I believe I saw you declaring that that's coming. So,
do you know one of my sayings? It's called pivot, don't panic. When presented with new information, you might want to sell that stock.
You're really high on the Blake Snell signing, huh? When he walks like 7 guys in his second starter.
Slater knows his baseball.
Oh, he does? Well, then do you also know that we also picked up a legitimate DH, the best defensive third baseman available?
Oh, my gosh.
We've got the best young left-handed arm in the game right now in Kyle Harrison.
Hey, did you see what I'm going to have to go through all season?
Second best youngest catcher in the game.
Third in the NL West has been clinched. I mean, you can send it in now.
Hey, second could get you to the World Series like the Arizona Diamondbacks last year.
And Slater, my producer Sam Lubman yesterday is talking about don't let us get in because anything happens in October.
Let us get in. That's
and
a
I'm
little
just
strong.
like, we got from boy get far hot out of here to boy. We could play with the Dodgers. I mean, it's fascinating what's happening out here.
More likely at this point, Warriors unlikely run to the NBA Finals or Giants to the World Series.
If I had to put 100, I'd probably put it on the Giants. I can't believe I'm saying that.
Man,
it's the truth.
I'm not betting against Steph Curry. I'm not betting against Steph.
What about the other 11 guys?
Yeah, I'm not betting against Clay either or CP3.
I thought Shasky was about to drop. What about Seth Corey? Isn't that one of their
Well played. Well played.
That's well played there. By the way, Lutman is Spinoni. Like, who's Anthony's baseball team? Well, I figured this out once Anthony moved to the Bay Area. It's the Cleveland Guardians. Big time Guardians fan. I do like Shea Bieber.
Ramirez.
Third in the AL Central is also on the way, so I can't talk to you.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a rough year for Cleveland. Podzeimski, real quick. A lot of people are getting on Podzeimski. I can't get out of him. I think he's exceeded expectations for the Golden State Warriors this season. I'm impressed with the rookie, but do you think he's hit a wall, the quote-unquote rookie wall? What did you see from Pods over the last couple weeks?
Well, I still think he does a lot of the small stuff, although he didn't rebound well the other night. And typically he does, right? Usually you see him up at 6, 7, 8 rebounds. His assist totals are, chunk assists, 4 or 5. He's going to take the charge. He's going to play solid enough team defense. Where you have not seen it lately is the scoring, right? Scoreless in 25 minutes the other night. I think his offensive limitations at this point in his career, in a starting lineup that does not have Clay is maybe shown lately,
right.
but that's part of his growth process. I do think longer term he has some scoring upside. He's off the bounce threes have been solid this year. His catch and shoot ones haven't. I've talked to him. I know that he wants to eventually kind of polish up the mid range and maybe go to the mid range a little bit more. It's been floaters, those little hooks that haven't worked as well. Not finishing inside as much. But again, I mean, you mentioned it's part of why the team is the 10th seed. They're starting a 19-year-old rookie. They're playing a rookie center a bunch. They're leaning young, and young is exciting at times in the NBA, but young typically doesn't get you to the West Finals, NBA Finals.
No doubt about that. By the way, the Grizzlies have 11 guys on the injury report. A lot of guys are
So that
out.
means career night for at least 2 players.
Better watch out for G.G. Jackson. That's for sure.
He killed him in Memphis.
Yeah, remember that?
Yeah, I do remember.
Oh, who's the other guy who killed him? The young man out of VCU. I got to do my Grizzlies scouting report. There's another guy out of VCU who destroyed him in that game, too.
You talking about the small point guard?
The small point guard. You know who I'm talking about. Even Slater's like, yeah, who's who of guys?
Jacob Gilliard, I believe.
Yeah, Gilliard. Yeah, solid game.
I got a bad news for you. I believe they cut him.
The Grizzlies are one team I'm not watching on League Pass. That's for sure. Anthony Slater, R95.
I'll take JJJ, though.
By the way, great message for you, Anthony, before we let you go. Jason Ruderman on YouTube. Anthony Slater is awesome. Hello, by the way, from Point Arena, California. So you got some fans here on the road, Slate.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'll see you later today at Chase Center. Warriors and Grizzlies. And thanks for the time as always, Slates.
Mini win streak. Shasty's going to be declaring West Finals run next week. I'm calling it now. I can't wait to talk to you.
Let's go.
It's the easiest bet you'll ever make, Slater. He is hot and cold, boy.
Just like the sun coming up.
Slater.
See you, bud.
On the roast, man.
Point Arena, California is in Mendocino County. I did not know that.